Welcome to this episode of Modern Sales Wisdom, the podcast. Today, we have Julian from Bow on the show. It's a really great conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. Why? Because we're going to be speaking about prospecting, and one thing which stood out in this conversation is how Julian differentiates between hyper-personalization on the one hand, and on the other hand, the numbers game that we all have in sales. He's working operatively on this. He has a business degree with a focus on psychology. So a lot of the conversation you're going to find of how he tries to understand the customer, the persona, and tries to build a value proposition for the individual. I found this very enlightening. We're going to talk about social media. We're going to talk about emailing. We're going to talk about the high skill of having great conversations on the telephone. And he gives his insights and he shares his wisdom with the sales community here on Modern Sales Wisdom. So enjoy the conversation with Julian. Julian, so great to have you here on the podcast. I want to kick it off with a very open question. What is, in your opinion, or what makes a great salesperson?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for inviting me, of course. It's a pleasure to be with you, Henry. In my opinion, of course, it is a lot about, okay, how can you give your customers or your future prospect or a seamless experience. I think, especially nowadays, a lot of people are getting overwhelmed with a lot of sales strategies. Is it multi-channel? Is it social media? Is it mailing? Whatever. And I think you need to stick out and give the customer the feeling, okay, I'm here, of course, to sell you something, but also to improve you in whatever you think you can help them.
So would you say the main belief is that it is important to let's maybe we can say care, but to show that you bring value to the customer. That makes
I
the best salesperson.
I mean, it really depends where we are at the stage and how you get the leads, of course. I mean, if you're, of course, for example, in inbound leads, or it's really somebody who is already interested, then of course, if it's more like, okay, we are, for example, outbounding, so really, okay, they have no touch points with you before. I think it is more, okay, how do I get the people that they are active listening to me? Because of course, I mean, if you see social media, if you see emailing, if you see calling, a lot of people are trying to get your attention, of course. And there it is more important, okay, how can I stick out of the crowd so I get your attention? And then from there, of course, the thing I said already is stick to place.
Great. This episode, we want to dive a little bit into the prospecting part and the how of where to be present, how to be present, how to adapt. Um, what would you say is the current trend which everybody's talking about, and what do you think? I mean, we've had this discussion before on a
Yeah.
different call. People reaching out. Is email still the right way? Is cold calling still the right way? Everybody's talking about social selling now. LinkedIn and all other social media platforms are completely crowded. What is your take on what kind of approach is the right approach in 2024?
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, it really depends on which industry you are and what you're targeting. But in general, what we see is a huge trend into, okay, during COVID, for example, mailing and social media worked perfectly fine because everyone was at home or at work. And now what we see, I mean, you have seen it as well, Henry. There is a lot of bots, for example, who are helping you basically targeting people on different channels. We are, of course, using it as well. So, for example, a cadence of, hey, I'm contacting via mailing, then I'm contacting you via LinkedIn, let's say a connection. Then, for example, I can like a post from you. So it is very not personalized, I would say. Of course, you try to do it as personalized as possible. Um, but if everyone is doing it, and it is no effort except of course setting it up once, people are not getting really emotional and touched by it. So I think, I mean, you know it the best. You get like in every day like 20, 30 messages from people. It's hard to stick out in the crowd. It's still working. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you can be one of the few people who are different than the others or have a great opener, then of course people are listening to you. But what we see mainly the mainly channel which is working now again is calling, just because I mean, you know the drill. As a sales guy, you need to find a channel which is not used that often than the other channels. And right now for us, it is calling by definitely, and it is the most efficient way, and of course the most hard, in my opinion, most of the hardest way, because of course it's real time. You can't like think 10 minutes to craft a mail or something. You really need to be authentic and the phone. And it's a lot of psychology, of course, as well. I mean, Henry, if I want to target you, of course, the first thing I need to think of is, okay, you have right now 100 mails, 20 projects ongoing. Now I'm picking up the phone, trying to say, hey, how are you doing? And how can I get you out of the daily business to active listening to me? And that's, I think, the hardest part for many salespeople. But we see it is the channel which is working the most efficient and the most successful way.
So it's about standing out. It's about being present in a platform where most people are not so present within your industry. How do you find that out? And I mean, what you're saying is you know, it comes back to the craft of the salesmanship. I mean, we are people that can craft words, can craft stories, and create value with the pictures that we put into other people's heads. How do you get to that point? Or what did you do out of your experience?
Yeah. So out of my experience, of course, I mean, in general, I think there is no silver bullet, of course. I mean, everyone needs to be at the end authentic. I think that's the most highest value you need to target, and find your way of doing it. I can speak, of course, of my experience. I had a great manager. She said the same thing I said right now. So, and for me, what really helped is basically, okay, for example, everyone loves to hear psychology. So how can I put that into my pitch basically and give the people, okay, what they really want to hear? So what I like, okay, it depends, of course, which channel you're targeting. But so, for example, social media, it is really helping to say psychological topics, and then build on that up. In my opinion, of course, in my way. The other way is always smiling. I think smiling helps a lot. Yeah, it's really sticking. It doesn't depend if you're on a video or if you're on a call. People are hearing if you smile. Be authentic. That's the number two. Our thing, of course. Stand up during calls. I mean, you have just a better feeling if you stand up. Your body is awake, and try to get motivated. I think, of course, you can influence the way you're selling and phoning, but I think like around 80% is about, okay, how are you feeling right now? I think you know it as well, Henry. Sometimes you have a prospect on your phone, and no, like it doesn't matter if he or she is interested. You're so motivated. You're getting that done to an follow up. But sometimes you have a bad day, or maybe you have some drinks the day before. Then of course you're not that motivated, and then like the first objecting handling you're getting, you're like, okay, come, let's drop it. So yeah, I think that's the I try to keep, or what's consistent, and I try to keep that, of course. Yeah, and for example, in my opinion, yeah, calling is, it really depends on the person. So, for example, I have persons who say, "Hey, three things in 30 seconds." They don't have time. They are not willing to hear you more than 30 seconds. I'm a little bit different. I try to do it on a personal level. So of course I try to try that you are interested to hear more about it, but more on a personal level. Hey, we are both humans. We both, of course, know the drill to get better, to have change in our lives. Let's just have a talk, and then we see from there, does it really make sense to go further or not? And I think, in my opinion, it really helped because I'm a very positive person, and it's sticking to our people, I hope.
Yeah. Let's take those three things that you mentioned: mail, social media, and telephony. Can we like dive into every one of these prospecting styles and maybe give a little how to how you would approach that?
Mhm.
Also with the experience that you have, and maybe also with with Bao, where you're working, that you can give a little bit of um, a context and put that in position. Then, why don't we start with, or you decide which of the three you want to start with.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we can start with the channels I used to play as well, back in the days. It's mailing and social media. I think I had a very similar approach. Doesn't matter if it's mailing or social media. So basically, what I did is like the first mail is pretty personalized. So I really tried to get into your LinkedIn profile, get a point of view. We call it why you now. So really, okay, why is it you that I'm targeting right now, and why does it make sense now to talk?
And this
Uh,
is you as a person, not you as a company, right?
yeah, it's you as a person. So really,
So
okay.
you always target exactly straight into the prospect, the person and the persona.
I mean, there are different opinions. Other people say like go on a company level and try to say, hey, according to your annual report or whatever, it makes sense now to talk because yada yada yada. I think on a personal level, people are way more open to talk. So what I really try to get, so for example, I targeted one of my target accounts for 2 weeks, and she had in her headline just, "Hey, I'm fabulous. I have 17 years of experience in sales, for example, and stuff like that." And then I was like, okay, how can I personalize or hyper personalize that thing? I mean, that's I think the main problem right now because of the bots and stuff like that. That hyper personalization is not there anymore. So what
Mm.
I did is basically okay, first mail, hey, yeah, hi, whatever. I had talks with some of your colleagues that wasn't alive. I had a talk with one of her colleagues. And then I was like, hey, as a fabulous 17 years of experience in sales, you know the drill, for example, that onboarding new people and stuff like that. And then I started with pitch basically. And she answered me pretty fast and said like, "Hey, long time ago that I got like that hyper personalized message. Sure, we can talk." And I think that's my way of getting the attention of people. And a LinkedIn is like social media for business, and you get mostly a lot of information about people and can use that, of course, to get their attention. And then the second, third, and fourth mail is basically okay, how do I get your attention if you don't answer? That is
Mhm.
basically automated. That's how I used to work in mailing and in social media. What is working really good for me is the first thing is like, hey, do you know the primus recency effect, for example? The mind loves to remember the beginning and the end of a story. But I hope you read the middle of my text. And then I give like a free sentence or pitch. And then hey, let's talk. Then after 3 days, 4 days, it depends on the case. The second mail is coming out. Hey, do you know the liking bias effect, for example? So you see, there's my psychological way of getting their attention. People are more willing to hear persons they feel attached to or like. It seems that I didn't reach that so far. So hey, let's have a talk. And after 5 minutes, if you don't see any value, we can quit that. That is working pretty good. And then the third email is working the best actually. It is more like, hey, I tried it multiple times, but it seems that you're right busy right now. Just give me an A, B, or C. Why is it not working? A, I'm not the right person. B, yeah, I'm just waiting for your Calendly link to get a meeting, basically. C was like, hey, there's so much going on right now. Get in touch with me in 3 weeks. And C is I got hijacked by aliens, and I get so many replies by that with a C, of course. And yeah, I think that's working the most. What are the best by mailing and LinkedIn for me so far? But yeah, and if we go to the king discipline, if I can call it like that, it's calling. Um, I need to think like how I do it. I mean, just to give a few about Bao, what I'm where I'm right now, that's our goal basically. So we target and crack the black box of cold calling and see, hey, why are Anna, for example, way better than Lisa, but they had both the same onboarding, for example.
Hmm.
And we are helping with that, giving insights, analysis, and stuff like that. Because I used to call a lot during my Salesforce time back in the days. And I was one of the few, and people were asking me, "Hey, why do you get so many meetings by calling?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can talk out of my mind, of course, but it's not filled with analytics." And we at Bao, we really try to analyze that and give you best practices and see, hey, what is working really good in your industry and your product, and what is not basic. But of course, so if it really goes, okay, or I would say there is two pillars. The first pillar is the psychological pillar. The second pillar is basically, okay, how do you sell something, and that personalized to that person actually. If we go to the psychology way of cracking up in conversation by calling, there are little tricks I would say that you can use that the people are more open to hear you. So, for example, if I want to call you Henry, the first thing I would say is like, "Hey, Henry, here's Julian from Bao," and then break. I think that's the most of the hardest thing I needed to learn because I'm someone who's very straight into chaotic. I wanted to jump right into the topic and wanted thing. But that break, at the beginning, it sounds very awkward, but it is really, really helpful that the people are arriving to the conversation and open to hear more. And really, sometimes it is really 2, 3 seconds silence until they answer, yeah, yes, here is whatever. But then you
Hmm.
know, hey, he or she is right now there and is focused on you. That's the first thing, of course. The second thing, what I really like to do is after they say like, "Hey, yes, Henry, for example, can I tell you really quick the reason why I'm calling you?" Why do I do that? Because unconsciousness, you are saying yes. 99% of people saying yes because why shouldn't they? What
Hmm.
I have experienced in consulting some of my people is that they like the main phrase they do is like, "Hey, do we have 2 minutes?" I think that's a weak opener because, of course, 2 minutes they say out of 30 seconds or whatever. Or you're getting that line. I mean, the line is perfectly fine, but do it with a joke. So, "Hey, Henry, do you have 2 minutes for me, or do I catch you at the most important meeting in your year, basically?" So then, okay, maybe that is working. But I like that. Hey, can I tell you the reason why I'm really calling you? Usually, I have the
Hmm.
first yes unconscious. People are more positive about you. So that's the thing. Then I start with my pitch. Basically, that's like about that. Why you now? So does it really make sense to call to be with us and to give like 1, 2 values. So for example, at Bao, we can increase the conversion rate by up to 43%. We help a lot of clients like that. Then some names dropping, of course, and then with that they are more willing to hear.
Hmm.
And then after that, I think I'm talking like 90% of the time. And then with a open question, I try that they are open and talking about their challenges right now in sales.
Hmm.
And they should talk 90% of the time. And I think that's the important part that you see also. Okay, does it make sense to go further? Or for example, do they have already a solution in mind or bought recently? So that doesn't make any sense to go further. I think that's the first pillar, the psychological. Okay, how to structure your way of calling people.
Hmm.
Second thing is the messaging, of course. I mean, it's hard. So, for example, if you are selling an HR tool, which is well, let's stick to the sales tool. I mean, I am selling a sales tool at the end. No? But for example, if I say, "Hey, your salespeople have 2 hours more per week because with Bao they're more efficient because you can automate transcript and get a summary out of it and fill it out in the CRM and stuff like that." And I go to the head of sales and say that he is saying most of the time, "Yeah, okay, then my salespeople have 2 hours more to drink coffee or meet with friends or whatever." So I think the value is more or better described. I say, for example, "Hey, with Bao, for example, your people have, you are saving, I mean, BDR rep is X amount of salary. If they have 2 hours less of work and can focus it on more on calling or being more valuable for the company, you are basically saving this amount of money. And that is way more interesting to hear of a head of sales or a CEO or a CRO. But of course, the salespeople, they want to hear that they have 2 hours more in the week to do other stuff. So yeah, it really depends to who you talk and how, okay, what's in for them. And if
Yeah.
I get that by the call, of course, they are not interested.
I'm really taking a lot away from this. It's been a lot of time since I've been actively calling, and but I can really resonate with a lot of things that you're saying. Talking about psychology first, talking about high level topics, which can then drill in and give perspective on the products which you're selling, and building the narrative around what is the exactly that's important for you, and what is it exactly that's important for you, and then the example you just gave with the head of sales in regards to the sales rep who might have a different kind of value in the same product which you're seeing there. This is really really insightful. Um, because we're always looking at around 20 minutes, and I want to make sure we're conscious of that time. I have so many more questions to ask. First, I want to say thank you for coming onto the podcast. It means a lot to me because we're giving this to the sales community. And if you're listening to this, I hope you're pressing that subscribe button to get more of information like this, to listen to people like Julian who can share their experience. And what I'd really like to understand a little bit more, Julian, is if we're talking about the psychology and we're talking about being, very hyper personal, on the other hand, we're always talking about numbers and metrics. And the last podcast I had somebody, or last this week, I had another recording, and it was all about the numbers behind sales. And now you're talking all about psychology, and I think it's always a balance. But let's make it very. If you have 1 week time, would you rather go for a numbers game to fill up your pipe with leads, or would you go for a personalized metric?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think the slogan "a numbers game" is not wrong. At the end, it is a numbers game in sales, 100%. But if you say you have 1 week time, then I think it is more hyper personalization. Because if you really have a strong POV and a really strong, okay, why you know, people are more willing to listen to you. And at the end, if you had made your research, it's a way more validated talk than I talk now. I try to target 1,000 people, for example, or let's say 100 people, and try to get 1, 2 people who are willing to give me their attention. But I really don't know right now if it really is beneficial for them or not. So I would go actually with the okay focus on psychology, no, not on psychology, on quality actually.
Hmm.
Uh, but of course, I think at the end it's all about odds, right? So I think sales is a lot about odds, a lot about okay, how strong is the product, how are good are you in sales, how is the market right now, how is the buyer situation right now. So yeah, but if I needed to bet my odds, I would go for quality over quantity.
Cool. I can relate to that. That would probably be my approach, but there's a tension in me which is like I have to do both.
100%. I mean, at the end, you're doing both, right? So, and that's the
I
beauty.
found this.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I want to say thank you again,
Oh,
and I want to lead into the last question, which is, what do you wish you would have known at the beginning of your sales career that you know now that would have made a difference?
I think like it sounds super simple. I think, but I I catch myself as well that I have sometimes problems following that line. So I think stick to the basics.
Mhm.
That's the thing I would give people because like of course you're getting your onboarding and all your metrics and stuff like that. So stick to the basics. They are really helping. It's not like okay because I often because you have so much going on, you're forgetting that and then of course you're doing like without any structure something and yeah I think stick to the basics helps a lot or helping a lot of people to get to overcome challenges.
Yeah. As you said, no silver bullets. At the end of the day, it's hard work, what we do.
The end, it is like that. 100% end.
Julian, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I would love you to smash that subscribe button and leave a like, leave a comment if you have any questions. I think the best way to reach out to Julian or to me would be via LinkedIn or down in the comment section. I really appreciate you guys tuning in as you do all the time. It means a lot to me. We do this out of love for the sales community, for you guys. So you're probably part of this. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Julian. Take care.
Bye.